My mother told me, daddy told me too. Help I bring your face on, and no friend to you. You ought to move to Kansas City. You ought to move Kansas City, baby, where they can't find you. You can see the ocean so long, deep and wide. And see my good girl stand on the other side. I'm gonna move to Kansas City. Then I move, baby. Oh, why they don't look like you? I feel like jumping straight up to the ground. Girl, I love, don't want me around. I'm gonna move to Kansas City. Then I move, baby. Oh, why they don't like you? I wish I was a catfish from down in the sea. I had some good woman just fishing out on me. Then I'd swim to Kansas City. Then I'd swim Kansas City, baby, where she can't find me. Don't like my peaches, don't you shake my tree. Get out of my orchard, let my peaches be. We gonna move to Kansas City. We gonna move Kansas City, baby, where they can't find you. I started walking, it got soaking wet. Thought about my good girl, and quit walking, and then I moved to Kansas City. Then I moved, baby. Oh, why they don't like you?
It's the great D4 Bailey, everybody.
I wish I was a jaybird, flying in the air, build my nesting song. I brown hair, then I fly to Kansas City. Then I'd fly Kansas City, baby, where she can't find me.
That's where our people had to get out of where they was.
I got me a bulldog, traveling through greyhounds. 2 high yellow, 3 black, and 1 brown. We gonna move to Kansas City. Then I knew, baby, oh, why they don't like you. I'm just from the country, no means the rule. Hit me to your wagon, gun, and drive me for your mule, and I moved to Kansas City.
What's going on, everybody? This is Super Mike 2164, and that's just that's called Kansas City by D4 Bailey. You know, it's just showing how, you know, black folks, we need to know our story, especially the ones in America, these foundational black Americans. And if you don't like that term, that's fine. But the point is, it's the people that descended from American slavery. These black people, we have a certain culture. We are unique. There's nothing wrong with that. Just like our brothers and sisters from all the various Caribbean islands have a uniqueness because of the lineage that they went through, the history that they went through, the struggles that they went through. You know, we got to stop taking each other's historical accounts as a threat. It does help us to unify when we understand and respect each other's difference and struggles in history, because it is a collective history when we get to it, because right now we are combining. We're in the process of combining, so there's a little bit of arguments and different stuff. So what I want to do right now is I was reading through our illustrious brother or ancestor, E. Franklin Frazier's, which is an account, and E. Franklin Frazier's, the Free Negro Family, Edward Franklin Frazier's. So of course that was like 1930s, 1920s. Forgot when that was put out. But he gives an account of someone that I didn't know about. This was Lunsford Lane. So we want to read through Lunsford Lane. And this is a good person for your Black children to bring up during and when they have projects during Black History Month, or if they have any projects during wherever they're doing. Talk about these people, because see, these are hidden folks. You can do a project on D4 Bailey. He has a great history. Great history. Is the first, well, I wouldn't say the first, probably the first recorded Black music star. First Black star. The first star. But right now we're talking about Lunsford Lane. And, when I read this story, I was like, wow. They always doing movies on the same people, which we love. Harriet Tubman. Slavery in general. Just basic slavery. And Emancipation was a good movie. The one Will Smith did, that should have been at the theaters. Now, if you're talking about a slave movie, that's a good one to look at, because it doesn't. It starts off with the slavery, the regular narrative, but it ends in victory, a real victory. Something that we should study more into, because really after that. But Lunsford Lane was before the Civil War, and we just really need to really focus on this blur in our Black American historical record. And the thing is, these people can inspire us, but it also can inspire our family all over the world. These are the people that we should look at. When I read this, I was like, wow, this man right here needs a movie. He really does. So I'm just going to start reading through some of this historical record. He actually wrote an autobiography. I'll read through some of that, but it's actually long, so I'm not going to read the whole thing of the autobiography. But let me just show some of it. Let's do it like this. What's up, guys? Press the thumbs up. Let me know. Let me know what you're thinking. So this is the author. Oh, no, this is not that one. Sorry. That's not the autobiography of Lawrence. But we will get in John Carruthers Stanley. Leroy Stanley, my brother. I don't know if that's your namesake. My brother Leroy Stanley always comes up and talks to me, and we be talking. I just looked and I said, wow, look at this here. Stanley. I seen a Patillo, a Reverend Henry Patillo in North Carolina, and I seen a John Carruthers Stanley, who, one of the more famous things that they always want to told about J.C. Stanley was he owned Black slaves. But, slavery, we got to realize it was illegal at that time. So the mentality of the people, if you're going to get rich, own some slaves. Now, the way you treat people, that was, I think, the main situation there. But hold on a second here. So I'm going to go through some of this here. Just the story of Lunsford Lane. And I'm just going to read right off The Free Negro Family by E. Franklin Frazier. And I'm just going to read the accounts that they got here. And this starts on page, let's see here. Hold on. Let's see. Page 42. I think that's the one. Like I said, guys, share this message. Look this brother up a little bit more too. I looked on Amazon. He has a biography, an autobiography, and it was free for me if you had an Amazon Prime. Hold on a second here. All right, so hold on. All right, so we're going to read. Starts on page 41, and I'm just going to read through it. So, hold on a second. Lunsford Lane was born a slave in Raleigh, North Carolina, in 1803. His mother was a house servant in the family of a plantation owner, while his father was owned by a neighbor. Of his early childhood, he wrote, "My early boyhood was spent in playing with the other boys and girls, colored and white, in the yard, and occasionally doing such little matters of labor as one of so young years could. I knew no difference between myself and the white children, nor did they seem to know any in turn. Sometimes my masters would come out and give a biscuit to me and another to one of his own white boys, but I did not perceive the difference between us. I had no brothers or sisters, but there were other colored families living in the same kitchen, and the children playing in the same yard with me and my mother." So that tells us of his perception of himself as he was growing up. And it also tells us that he grew up with white friends, okay, or friendly people. Now we got to understand too that slavery and racism and this oppression is a systematic thing. So if you join it, you have to submit to it, otherwise it will punish you. And the rule of the game is black people must stay on the bottom. Any upward mobility in black person, must be approved first, and it cannot coincide with upward mobility of too many other black people. Okay, so that's what slavery, oppression in the United States is. Racism. That's pretty much what it is. So let's keep reading. So E. Franklin Frazier says, he became conscious of his slave status when he began to work. He said, E. Franklin Frazier is talking about Lunsford Lane. He said, "They began to order me about and were told to do so by my master and mistress." So the white man is teaching the white children to now order Lunsford around. I found, too, that they had learned to read while I was not permitted to have a book in my hand. To be in the possession of anything written or printed was regarded as an offense. And then there was the fear that I might be sold away from those who were dear to me and conveyed to the far south. I had learned that being a slave, I was subject to this worst to us of all calamities, and I knew of others in similar situations to myself, thus sold away. My friends were not numerous, but in proportion as they were few, they were dear. And the thought that I might be separated from them forever was like that of having the heart torn from its socket, while the idea of being conveyed to the far south seemed infinitely worse than the terrors of death. And keep in mind, Lunsford is the only child of his mama. His brothers and sisters was them white kids that he grew up playing around. So he has a different mentality than so as a slave they would have in turned out would be a spoiled slave. So he thought a little bit differently than they like to train black people to think. But we need to understand too that empathizing, when we say bad, some black folks like to pick every occasion to try to make white people seem cool. Oh, see, some of those white people helped them. See, that's your slave thoughts. That's your slave thinking coming out of you. Now, your desire to make friends with white people should not overrule your desire to have justice. You got to get that slave thinking out of you. You shouldn't even have that thought process. It's just people. And, I was talking to a brother earlier today. He was talking about how, DeSantis has destroyed Black history teaching in Florida. Okay, and he said it. He said that was wrong, but you should be able to teach Black history without demonizing white people. That's stupid. You can't do that because the demon has to be exposed if you're going to teach the right history. This is the whole reason why they hide the history. They demonize you. It's not about you purposely demonizing somebody. You tell the whole history, but it's the system that these particular white people who are his friends, they can only do so much within that system. They have to treat you as you should be treated. You are Black, you therefore are to be oppressed, and you are a slave. This is just it. Now we can treat you as a slave, we can treat you nice, but we have to steal your labor. We have to give you the raw deal. And you should be lucky that we're not treating you like we could treat you. As the Black person, it is your job to fight to disrupt and mess up that system. And when you fight and disrupt and mess up that slave system, that slavery mentality, you fight to mess up that racist mentality. It's going to make even those white people who you call friends, some of them are going to be upset because they kind of are comfortable in that system. It makes them comfortable. So, abolitionist, author, and businessman. Okay. So let's go some more. Now, like I said, we love Harriet Tubman, but we know Harriet Tubman couldn't have been the only one. So let's go some more here. To know also that I was never to consult my own will, but was while I lived to be entirely under the control of another, was another state of mind hard for me to bear. See, because he grew up playing with white people and he couldn't stand, he knew he was just as smart as them or smarter. So it's like he got to be in control of them. Indeed, all things now made me feel what I had before known only in words, that I was a slave. Deep was this feeling, and it preyed upon my heart like a never dying worm. I used to plan in my mind from day to day and from night to night how I might be free. See, this is another thing. This is why Harriet Tubman said I could have freed a lot more if they had knew they were slaves. So that was the solution for the white supremacists. They had to make slavery something where they were stealing your resources, but you didn't see it that way. And that's what we have going on now. So Lunsford Lane has also given us an account of his first efforts to buy his freedom. So this man knows that he's a slave. He knows that he's a prisoner. Now, here's the plan to get yourself out of that, because that's the first thing you're going to do once you realize that you're trapped. One day, while I was in this state of mind, my father gave me a small basket of peaches. I sold them for 30 cents, which was the first money I had ever had in my life. Afterwards, I won some marbles. And first money, excuse me, let me read that one again. One day, while I was in this state of mind, my father gave me a small basket of peaches. I sold them for 30 cents, which was the first money I had ever had in my life. Afterwards, I won some marbles and sold them for 60 cents. And some weeks later, Mr. Hogg from Fayetteville came to visit my master, and on leaving gave me $1. After that, Mr. Benhan from Orange County gave me $1, and a son of my master 50 cents. These sums and the hope that then entered my mind of purchasing at some future time my freedom made me long for money, and plans for money making took the principal possession of my thoughts. At night, I would steal away with my axe and get a load of wood to cut for 25 cents. And the next morning, hardly escape a whipping for that offense. I persevered. Is that persevered or preserved? I persevered until I had obtained $20. Now, I began to think seriously of becoming able to buy myself. And cheered by this hope, I went on from one thing to another, laboring at dead of night after the long weary day's toil for my master was over, till I found I had collected $100. This sum I kept hid, first in one place and then in another, as I dare not put it out for fear I should lose it. So he kept moving his money. He ain't let nobody know. After this, I lit upon a plan, which proved of great advantage to me. My father suggested a mode of preparing smoking tobacco different from any then or since employed. I had the double advantage of giving the tobacco a peculiarly pleasant flavor and enabling me to manufacture a good article out of a very indifferent material. I improved somewhat upon his suggestion and commenced the manufacture, doing as I have done before, all my work in the night. The tobacco I put up in papers of about a quarter of a pound each and sold them 15 cents. But the tobacco could not be smoked without a pipe. And as I had given the former the flavor peculiarly grateful, it occurred to me that I might construct a pipe as to cool the smoke in passing through it, and thus meet the wishes of those who are more fond of smoke than heat. This I effected by means of a reed which grows plentiful in that region. I made a passage through the reed with a hot wire, polished it, and attached a clay pipe to the end so that the smoke should be cooled and flowing through the stem like whiskey or rum in passing from the boiler through the worm of the still. These pipes I sold at 10 cents apiece. In the early part of the night, I would sell my tobacco and pipes and manufacture them in the latter part. As the legislators sit in Raleigh every year, I sold these articles considerably to the members. He was selling to the members of the legislature, so that I became known not only in the city, but in many parts of the states as a tobacconist. So listen to that business mind. This man was a manufacturer, a grower, and an innovator in selling tobacco. He flavored the tobacco, which is like menthol. He devised a way to cool the smoke. He was really just a hardworking businessman, and he was an innovator, solving problems. So let's read some more. So now this is E. Franklin Fraser talking now. When Lunsford Lane was 25, he married according to the usual slave ceremony, a slave woman. Within 2 years, his savings had a slave woman. So within 2 years, his savings had been consumed because he was forced to support his 2 children and his wife, whose master would not contribute to their upkeep. Fortunate for Lane, the death of his master required his mistress to sell some of the slaves to hire out others in order to settle the indebtedness against the estate. Lane hired his time at a price varying from $100 to $120 a year. Then he began manufacture of pipes and tobacco on large scale. His business acumen and his ambition to earn enough to obtain his freedom are shown in the following account, which he gives of his activities. So right there, we see that, and this is kind of the same game that they play today on a scaled version. So Lunsford had married a slave woman who was owned by her master. But the advantage of allowing the slaves to marry was the master still controlled the human being, still was able to force them to work, still was able to do everything for them. But the institution of marriage, because of the institution of marriage, the master could tell the husband or the slave husband that it's his job as a man, which is nature's job as a man, to take care of your wife and children. I don't have to take care of your wife and children, but I get to extract because of this sick institution of slavery and racism. And that's kind of how it is with the welfare system. The man can't be in the house. If he is, she can't get welfare. So they got these guys that come into the home, but they don't allow them to be married. And then, it's just weird, and if they get married, then they lose welfare. So, but they're still responsible for their children. But they can be, they can be subjected to all sorts of, they have no control, basically taking the control away from the man. So that's just interesting to me. So here's the following account he gives of his activities. I opened a regular place of business, labeled my tobacco in conspicuous manner with the name Edward and Lunsford Lane, and of some of the persons who sold it for me established agencies for the sale in various parts of the state, one at Fayetteville, one at Salisbury, one at Chapel Hill, and so on. Sold my articles from my place of business, and about town also deposited them in stores on commission. See, this is how you run business. You start off using commission. And thus, after paying my mistress for my time and rendering such support as necessary to my family, I found in the space of some 6 to 8 years that I had collected the sum of $1,000. So this is after paying all his obligations. So he was making even way more than that as far as generating. But after 6 to 8 years, he had over $1,000. After he paid, because he had to pay his master, his mistress, the woman that owned him. He had to pay for his kids and wife, and he had to, buy stuff for his business and pay the commission for those who sold. And after that, he had over $1,000. And keep in mind, that's over like $20,000-$30,000 nowadays. Okay. So anyway, so what he did is in the space of some 6 to 8 years that I had collected the sum of $1,000. During this time, I had founded politic to go shabbily dressed. He dressed bummy. He always dressed bummy. I had found it politic to go shabbily dressed and to appear to be very poor, but to pay my mistress for my services promptly. He kept paying her right away. I kept my money hid, never venturing to put out a penny, nor to let anybody but my wife know that I was making any. The $1,000 was what I supposed my mistress would ask for me, and so I determined now what I would do. So he knew that she was going to ask him for about $1,000 for himself. He has to buy himself first. This is insane, but this is the sick institution of slavery. This is the reason why reparations for descendants of enslaved people in America is definitely, it's just the right thing to do. This is decades and hundreds of years of stolen labor. Okay. So back to E. Franklin Fraser. Lane succeeded in purchasing his freedom for $1,000 through his wife's master. Since he could not legally buy his own freedom, in fact, his wife's master could not manumit him legally, since Lane had not performed, according to the law, any meritorious service. And this is, if you want to know what meritorious manumission is, you type in that meritorious manumission, type in, Dr. Claude Anderson, meritorious manumission. Dr. Claude Anderson will explain to you what meritorious manumission is. So you have to save a white person. You have to rat out another black person. You have to be a coon. You have to be somebody who is showing that he kissing white people's behind. And then you could apply to be manumitted. Okay. So meritorious service. Therefore, it was necessary to take him to New York in order to give his manumission a legal status. Then Lane turned his thoughts to purchasing the freedom of his family. So and at the time of his wife and 6 children. At first, his wife's master wanted $3,000 for the family, but after some bargaining, he let Lane have them for $2,500. He gave 5 notes of $500, each payable the 1st of January for 5 years, beginning in 1840. January 1839 found Lane and his family in their own home. So even though he was buying them, they still were able to, live in, he bought a house. So January 1839 found Lane and his family in their own home, which had already been purchased. Lunsford Lane's success in business, and especially his freedom, incited the hostility. Who's mad? See, Lunsford Lane, success in business, and especially his freedom, incited the hostility of the white populace. They didn't give us exact names. So when we're trying to pretend that, oh, just because he had a few white people help him, remember who won. Who was the winning white people? Okay. So you got to just realize, like, you can't be trying to pick and choose which, okay, these white folks, they got to win. If they're going to help you, they got to win against their other white people. They got to battle or something. Otherwise, we got to treat them the same, because we can't be picking and choosing, as far as how we behave, because we have to treat the white supremacist system the same. Otherwise, you can't get rid of it, because you'll be sympathetic and empathetic to it. You can't empathize with something that you need to destroy. So, Lunsford Lane's success in business, and especially his freedom, incited the hostility of the white populace. He was charged with violating the law which forbade free Negroes from other states. Now, even though he was from North Carolina, he had to go to New York to get his true freedom manumitted, and then he had to come back, so they said that he was from New York. So he was charged with violating the law that forbade free Negroes from other states to enter the state of North Carolina, and was ordered to leave the state within 20 days. He appealed to his white friends. And keep in mind, these are legislators and stuff, people he has sold tobacco and pipes to. And through their influence, he was permitted to remain in the state until the meeting of the legislator. His petition to the legislator to be allowed to remain in the state was voted down. The petitions of two other free colored people were treated in the same manner. So they were just kicking black folks out. Y'all getting too free. On the 18th of May, 1841, Lane, having paid for one of his daughters, set out for New York. About a year later, when he had sufficient money to pay for the remainder of his family, he sought permission from the governor to re-enter the state in order to conclude the transaction. Although the governor denied having authority to grant this permission, he informed Lane's white friends, because they had to talk through proxy, that it would be safe for him to come quietly and leave as soon as possible. In fact, one white friend implied in a letter that the time was propitious because the people were alive on the subject of temperance and religion. This, however, did not prevent his arrest on the unfounded charge of having delivered abolition speeches in Massachusetts. So they arrested him for delivering. They claim that he delivered speeches of abolition in Massachusetts. He was ordered out of the city, but a mob made it necessary to place him in jail for safekeeping. So they used to put black people in jail to keep you safe from other white people. Okay. Upon his release, he was tarred and feathered. They tarred and feathered him by a mob of working men who were satisfied with inflicting some form of humiliation. So these were the non-slave holding white men. So all these white people who trace their ancestry back, talking about, oh, our family never owned slaves. But you kept the situation, you kept the institution strong because you hated the black people. You had a hatred for them. So they didn't kill him though, so that was good. But they just wanted to humiliate him, to show him he was an uppity Negro. How dare you, nigga, try to get free? We tarred and feathered you, beat you, and laughed at you. After he settled for his family, he was prepared to leave. His mother's mistress, affected by the separation of Lane from his mother, permitted her to accompany the family. During the autumn of now, so that was the happy ending. He didn't die. He was just tarred and feathered. Okay. And he got his family. and his mama came. Now, this is the issue that's interesting that affects us too when, on the forgetting of our history, on how E. Franklin Frazier kind of ends this. So actually, it's a happy ending for Lunsford Lane, but for us all in remembering our history, let's read this last part. So during the autumn, now this is like 50 years after that, somewhere around like 40 to 50 years after that. So during the autumn of 1897, so Bassett, this is a writer. This is a writer. So Bassett, by chance, noticed at a Negro fair in North Carolina a placard which read, "Horses owned and exhibited by Lunsford Lane." So he approaching a Negro farmer, he asked, "Who is Lunsford Lane?" And the man said, "I am, sir," was the reply. "What kin are you to the original Lunsford Lane?" "Don't exactly know, sir. Reckon he was my uncle." "What became of him?" questioned Bassett, in order to draw him out. The man answered, "Think he must have immigrated." Bassett concludes his account with the observation. Now, this is anti-slavery. Bassett, this is a first-hand account of speaking to, this is a writer, Bassett. Let's see, what books is this? I'm trying to find the book. Anti-Slavery Leaders of North Carolina, Baltimore, 1898. So the writer of that book actually wrote about Lunsford Lane and had this interaction with, I believe, a nephew of Lunsford Lane. So Bassett concludes the account with the observation: Here was a thrifty enough to become the owner of a pair of very good farm horses, but not enough of intelligence to remember the fate of the most remarkable member of the man's family, who was still alive 30 years ago. So 30 years prior to 1897, which was 1867. How much did that family lose in the immigration of Lunsford Lane? So, that's it there. That's all we'll read about Lunsford Lane. The brother was, a good businessman. This was to me, it was a story, a good story. He was the hero. He manipulated the situation. He used his connections, which some of them were white, but they weren't saviors. But he used them to obtain the immigration of his family, the love of a black man for his family and his children. And he was a business-minded brother. And, there was a lot of controversy, but he in fact won. His family went up to New York, I believe. Now we know Seneca Village, all of those things. Maybe they were part of that. Because our people, if you start looking at this history, you start realizing that we had a very strong network of black folks doing things that has been kind of hidden from us. A lot of black people doing stuff. Next time we'll go over John C. Stanley, and we'll see what he was doing. But right now we're dealing with Lunsford Lane. Guys, look up this a little bit more. I'm just going to show you this here. Lunsford Lane, he has a autobiography you can get right on Amazon. Let me see here. See if I can show y'all this before I go down. And there it is there. The narrative of Lunsford Lane, formerly of Raleigh, North Carolina, embracing account. This is from him, a public domain book. And I think you could just get it right off of Amazon for free. You can go ahead and look at it, the narrative of Lunsford Lane. him telling you the slave mother's address. The original had the slave mother's address to her infant child. He put this, his mother wrote this to him. I cannot tell you how much love to look on thee, my child. So he grew up in a house where his mother loved him. They were slaves, though. Nor how that looking rocks my soul as on a tempest wild. For I have borne thee to the world, and bid thee breath its air, but soon to see around thee dawn the curtains of despair. So as he grow up, he's going to have curtains of despair, because these were poems. And like I said, black folks, we were loved. I think black people were smarter on certain levels then than we are now, because they really messed us up. We desired to have education and to make sure that we were building. But so the mother, the curtains of despair, she knew that he was a slave and he was going to find out, but she tried to just protect him from it. So that was important. Now thou art happy, child, I know, as little babe can be. Thou dost not fancy in thy dreams, but thou art all as free as birds upon the mountain winds. If thou hast thought of bird or anything thou thinkest of, or thy young ear has heard, what are thy little thoughts about? I cannot certain know. Only there is not a wing of them upon a breath of woe. For not a shadow's on thy face, nor billow heaves thy breast, all clear as any summer's lake, with not a zephyrs pressed. So that's how he started off his narrative. And like I said, guys, you can pick that up on Amazon. And I think we're going to, you know what? Y'all couldn't even see it. Let's look at it now. Let's see if y'all can see it now. There you go. That is it there. So this is the narrative of Lunsford Lane. I got it on Amazon Kindle. You can get that. It's an ebook. And I think we should, like I said before, guys, all we need to do is just start learning how to, I'm going to end it off with another D4 Bailey. Like I said, we should start looking into this section of history. It's not that big. It's not that hard to do. The records are there. And the thing is, white people know more about you than you do. Just like Lunsford Lane's nephew didn't know about him. He was named after him, but he didn't know nothing about him. But those are the things that we need to kind of understand, to fill in these gaps and to give us more motivation, and so that we start thinking better about ourselves. And that's it.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, take it. Cut it. Hey. Yeah, yeah. Take it. Take it. Take it. Yeah. Yeah.